Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good day all. So in this video, we are going to look at the concept of anatomy of the lungs. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, and join my YouTube community for more videos. Introduction to lung anatomy. The lungs are essential respiratory organs located in the thoracic cavity. So very importantly, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand when we are talking about lungs, it's one of the very important organs in our body that is responsible for respiration in our body, and it is located in the thoracic cavity. And very importantly, these lungs, they facilitate gas exchange by bringing oxygen into the blood and removing carbon dioxide. So it is actually, remember, we take in oxygen and we bring out carbon dioxide. So it is the work of the lungs to facilitate this gaseous exchange by bringing oxygen that we are taking into the blood for circulation and also remove carbon dioxide as a waste. And very importantly, we should understand that the lungs are paired organs. So we have one pair of lungs, with each one divided into different lobes and segments. Let's look at it. You see, this is actually the lungs, as we can see. And of course, from here, you can see that it is a pair. We have one here and we have one here. And of course, as you can see, it's divided into two lobes. We have a right lobe and then we have left lobe. So this is actually the lungs. If you look at it, it is a paired organs and each is divided into lobes. And of course, we have left lobes and we have right lobes. So then what are the external structures of the lungs? The lungs are cone-shaped. So it has a cone shaped with a broad base resting in the diaphragm and a pointed apex near the clavicle. So you see it is a cone shape and it is rested in the diaphragm and also it is pointed affixed. So let's see. And of course, the right lung is larger. So you should understand that. And of course, remember in the previous slide, I told you that the lungs is divided into two. We have left and right lungs. And the right lungs is larger and it has three lobes, while the left lung has two lobes to accommodate the heart. So you see, that is why you need to understand that the heart is located at the left side of our lung, and that is why it has two lobes, because of the presence of these two lobes, that is what make the left lungs to accommodate the heart. And of course, the surface of the lungs is smooth and covered with or uncovered by a serous membrane. So the surface of the lungs is very smooth and it is covered by a membrane, and the membrane is called visceral pleura. So visceral pleura is the membrane that covered the surface of the lungs. So let's look at it very well, ladies and gentlemen. You see, this is the lung. And as you can see, we have the right and we have the left. These are the lobes that we have. You see the lobes here in the right, as we mentioned, we have three. You can see we have superior lobe, we have middle lobe, and then we have inferior lobe. But in the case of the left lungs, it has only superior and inferior lobes. And this is the diaphragm, as I explained. The cone-shaped lung is rested on the diaphragm. So this is the diaphragm, and as you can see, it rested on this diaphragm. The two lungs, both the left and the right, are rested on the diaphragm. And very importantly, this is where we have the visceral pleura. So the visceral pleura is the membrane that covered the surface of the lung. So very importantly, now let's look at the lobes and the segment of the lungs. The right lung consists of, as we can see, it contains superior, middle, and inferior lobes, which is separated by fissures. So fissures is what actually separated these two lobes, as we can see. Where is the fissure here? So we have oblique fissure. Look at it. So that is what actually separates the lobes. Look at it. This is the horizontal fissure, and this is also another oblique fissure. So you see one lobe is separated by another lobes using a fissure. So then, of course, the next thing, look at it here. This is where we have the inferior lobe. This is the middle lobe for the right, and then this is the superior lobe in the case of the right lung. And then for the left, we have inferior lobe, and then we have superior lobe. So because of these two lobes in the left artery, that is why the heart is accommodated in the lungs. So of course, as we can see, the left lung has only the superior and inferior lobes divided by opaque fissure. So this is actually the opaque fissure that separates it. And each lobe is further divided into bronchopulmonary segment. So you should understand that for each of these lobes is further divided into bronchopulmonary segment, which are functionally independent units of the lungs. So now the next thing is the internal structure of the lungs. So the primary bronchi enter the lungs at the hilum and branch into the secondary and tertiary bronchi. So you should understand that the primary bronchi, which is one of the internal structure of the lungs, is enter the lungs at the hilum, and then after that, then in the hilum, it branch into secondary and tertiary bronchi. And these bronchi distribute air through a complex network of smaller bronchi and bronchioles. So you should understand that it is actually the work of these bronchi when we take air. So it is actually this complex, with a complex network that distributes the air from smaller bronchi and then to bronchioles. So as you can see, the bronchi distribute air through a complex network of smaller bronchi and then bronchioles. So the alveoli are the tiny sacs at the end of the bronchioles where gaseous exchange occurs. So you should understand here, ladies and gentlemen, it is very important. The bronchi get air. When it gets the air, then it will now distribute the air through a complex network of a smaller bronchi. And then from the bronchi, then it will now move to bronchioles. And in each bronchioles, there are tiny alveolar sacs where exactly gaseous exchange takes place. So that's the most important thing that you need to understand. So as you can see here, this is actually the lungs, and this is where we have the trachea. And of course, this trachea divides the lungs into two, left and right. And of course, as you can see from here, we have the primary bronchus. And then this primary bronchus, as you can see, it's further divided into secondary bronchi. And of course, moving to the tertiary bronchi. And then after that, we have the bronchioles, these smaller things appears like nerves or veins. They are called bronchioles. And then in each of these bronchioles, there are tiny alveoli. And these tiny alveoli is where the gaseous exchange takes place in the lung. Then the blood supply of the lungs. The lungs receive deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle via the pulmonary arteries. So you should understand that one thing that happens actually, the lungs usually received deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle via the pulmonary arteries. So pulmonary arteries receive deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle, the lungs. And then, of course, very importantly, this deoxygenated blood is returned to the heart. So it will go back to the heart through pulmonary veins. So from the right ventricle of the heart, the blood will now move to the lungs through pulmonary artery. And of course, the blood is deoxygenated. So of course, the deoxygenated blood move from the right ventricle of the heart to the lungs through the pulmonary arteries. And then at the same time, this oxygenated blood will now return back to the heart through pulmonary veins. And then the lungs also have a rich supply of bronchial arteries that provides nutrient to the lung tissue. So see, it is very important to understand that the lungs also it is highly rich in some bronchial arteries, and these bronchial arteries are very important for providing nutrients to the lung tissue. So look at them here. We have, this is of course where we have the airways in the lungs, and then we have pulmonary arteries which remove the oxygenated blood from the right ventricle to the lungs, and then we have the pulmonary veins which remove oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. So then the innervation and lymphatics. So the lungs are innervated by, or is actually distributed through various organs by autonomic nerves from the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So you should understand that the parasympathetic nervous system stimulation, it causes it causes bronchoconstriction. So you should understand that the lungs are innervated by autonomic nerves. That is, it means that in the lungs, there are various nerves that's distributed or that connect the lungs and other part of the body. And these nerves are autonomic nerves coming from parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. So the parasympathetic stimulation is what causes the bronchoconstriction, while sympathetic stimulation causes bronchodilation. And of course, very importantly, the lymphatic vessels in the lungs are drained into the bronchopulmonary and mediastinal lymph nodes. So very importantly now, ladies and gentlemen, in summary and clinical relevance, so understanding the lung anatomy is crucial for diagnosing and treating respiratory diseases. And conditions like pneumonia, asthma, and lung cancer involve specific part of the lung structure. So the knowledge of lung anatomy will aid in procedures such as intubation, bronchoscopy, and thoracic surgery. So ladies and gentlemen, you see, as from here you can understand that if you are able to understand the anatomy of the lungs, it means that you will be able to understand the basics as well as the development of targeted therapies of the diseases that are associated with the lungs. So ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to subscribe, follow, and join my YouTube community for more videos, and see you next time.